Hello everyone on Instagram Live, YouTube Live. It's Dan from Atlas Lens Co.
Wait, are we live right now?
We are live right now.
Shit, no one told me that.
I just told you.
Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna have to do. No one's even there yet. How many people are on there? Like one?
We got at least 12.
Wow.
That's a good start. Thank you so much for joining us.
Instagram is on point. I gotta say that was like 3-second login.
We've instituted the dual stream system, so we're streaming on both YouTube Live and Instagram Live.
Okay.
And then that way, if we want to go laugh at ourselves as we get older, we can click back on the YouTube and look at ourselves.
Okay. I'll try not to humiliate myself.
So hello everyone out there on Instagram Live and YouTube Live. It's Dan from Atlas Lens Co. I'm here with cinematographer Christopher Probst, ASC, and co-author of the Cine Lens Manual.
We're getting comments, audio's not.
Audio's not sounding good? It's not working or it's not sounding good?
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh.
Audio's no good.
I'm going to do
Test.
my best to kick that up a notch. Give me 1 second. Be patient. Just going to pop in there. And
I can talk if that helps you give a level.
We're showing levels.
Level. Lenses. Let there be lenses.
Maybe we have audio on YouTube but not IG.
Let's provide them with some tasty lens flares while they wait.
hello. Testing the audio. It could be better, but they can hear us. So.
Test.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
we got our band
Pop
playing
on
in the background.
Just
We've always known that the audio is not yet perfect in these things, and that's why we're camera people, not sound people, right? So,
True that.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's Dan Keynes from Atlas Lens Co. We're joined by cinematographer and co-author of the Cine Lens Manual, Christopher Probst, ASC. Thank you so much for coming on with us today.
My pleasure.
Big day 2 of NAB. We're all parched and dry out here in the Las Vegas desert,
Yes.
but I had a pretty fun day yesterday. How about you?
It was great. Yeah, I was on a couple panels talking about virtual production. Which,
That seems to be a prescient topic this year.
yeah, I would say it's the buzzword of the. Everywhere you look on the floor, you just see virtual this, virtual that. So it's kind of if there was a theme for this year, I think it's that. Especially coming out of the pandemic. So.
I have a curveball question about that. I'm wondering, how do you feel about mixed reality, like AR, XR, as it relates to, I started thinking recently,
It's
a lot of what we watch.
They don't hear anything.
this is what we're getting.
Yeah. Well.
We can't make out anything. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're just getting a lot of comments about
Okay. Let's cut it out, I guess.
Sorry.
The reality is the sound here is just terrible.
It seems to be something like.
Wow.
Well, it's definitely peaking now. So,
Test.
how's that? There we go. Let's try that. I have a feeling, just turn it off, Eric, on your side. It's going to have to be what it is for today. So, it'll either sound really terrible or we'll make it through. We will, just turn off yours on the playback side. We will get through this one way or the other. Maybe it won't sound great, but it did sound good on YouTube, so.
Oh, it did?
If the Instagram one sounds terrible, then we'll fix it later.
Oh, okay.
We'll fix it in post. So, actually, I'm going to start with another random question. Team Bokeh or Team Bokeh?
Bokeh.
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 Yeah.
Bokeh is
Not
okay.
bouquet. It's not a bunch of flowers or anything like that. And it's not bokeh. Bokeh.
Okay. Bokeh, okay. It rhymes.
Okay, bokeh, yeah.
This has been a very important question for a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
us,
we
lens aficionados.
We vetted that for, umpteen hours for the book to make sure we really understood.
You had to travel to some
And I
rural
talked to some
provinces
Japanese
in,
people, yes.
in Japan.
Yes.
Perfect. So what's been the highlight of being here in Las Vegas for you so far?
Highlight. I just, I want to keep abreast of what's coming down the pike, especially I'm working in the virtual production arena a lot, and I have a new company that's also specializing in end-to-end solutions in virtual production, so I want to make sure I'm sort of plugged into that rapidly changing technology and what's going on with panels and stuff, because I see a lot of opportunities in improvements in that arena. I've gone on to multiple sort of virtual stages of varying degrees of engineering prowess, and I like this aspect, but I don't like that aspect, and it doesn't make any sense to me from a lighting standpoint or a limitation on what you can do on the stages. So understanding where we are with the hardware side of it helps me inform how I then will sort of envision the capabilities and push those capabilities. So that's kind of what we're doing. The company we've created is called Synapse Virtual Production.
Synapse Virtual Production.
And so the first sort of projects we did through Synapse, we built our own volume stage, and immediately, even on sort of like the prototype V1 of that spec, it was like, yes. I mean, we had full resolution ceiling, no sort of gap or transition between the wall and the ceiling, and no cameras interrupting that horizon line up there. So you talk about virtual production being in-camera VFX or final pixel. Well, when you have a big gap in the ceiling, or you have a different resolution on the ceiling, and it's just about maybe getting reflections or interactive lighting, but not be able to shoot it, then you're painting out, you're rotoing, you're doing all sorts of stuff to fix a limitation on the engineering spec, as opposed to come up with a design where you're not battling that. And to say that I've gone on to multiple virtual production stages, we're like, oh yeah, no one shoots the ceiling. It's like, well, I do.
Hey, yeah, have you been on a film set before?
Yeah, right. And you're going to tell the director, cinematographer, not to put the camera low and make the talent look, heroic or whatever. But then you're shooting up into a gap or a void, or cameras up there that you got to be painted out. And
I remember coming to visit you actually on that Synapse stage, and I was blown away because I was kind of confused just with my own eyes. And wow, are these set pieces up here, or is this actually the screen?
Yeah.
And you also taught me my favorite word related to virtual production, which is frustum. Frustum. Oh, I was saying it wrong.
Yes, everyone does.
It's
a hard word to say. Frustum.
Still fun to say. It's
Frustum.
very satisfying when you get it out.
Well, there's the term rostrum, which sounds like frustum, and then it's very confusing. But the frustum is basically, you'll see a lot of times on behind the scenes, there's like this square that floats around on the wall, and that's where the engine that's driving all the graphics and also the tracked camera data is all being put into that high resolution viewport. And everything outside of there is sort of just like bonus, like ambient lighting or sort of enveloping environmental for the actors, but it's not actually being shot by the lens. So the virtual production system knows the focal length you have on and what the angle of view that lens will see, and it gives you a little bit of margin around there. But when you are moving a camera and you're having objects in the virtual space having parallax, that only occurs with inside the frustum, not outside. And you can do little tricks too, like you could say, maybe you're doing a dark scene. So you have the frustum nice and dark so that it looks moody behind the actors, but then you can kick up the exposure on the outside frustum to get ambient light. Like if you're in a downtown city.
Yeah.
And they're going through street lights, so the ambient can be brighter.
Very clever. I imagine there's also some tricks you could do with bokeh as well.
You can.
Is that something you played with a little bit, with altering sort of
there's a few things
geometry of things in the frustum?
You can do a few little tricks with depth of field. Like if you wanted to force a little bit depth of field, a little bit on the virtual goes a long way, because you don't need to exaggerate depth of field too bad, because you're sort of shooting your foreground and you're going to get a natural sort of fall off. But you can also do things like you can have the focus talking to the Unreal system. So as you rack if you wanted to rack in and through into infinity on the actual virtual environment, you can hook up from a physical rack into a virtual rack.
Wow.
What's funny though is that you have to limit, like, you can focus on pixels and get moire, but you could be racking through that and it could be out of focus, but you have in focus moire, which is a little of a mind boggle.
That's
so
tricky.
A lot of what the specs that we are looking at and the sort of design that we're doing in our volume constructions is also about picking the product that, and the camera, lens camera and panels that are going to minimize the occurrence of moire. It's like when you get someone to say, is this shirt going to moire? And it's like, well, possibly. How close are you? What are you focused on? What's your sensor grid? You know, so
this is sort of one of the key things that people forget too about placement of the camera relative to the display, right? And the actor.
Yeah, I mean, I, as a sort of like default, I use a rule of thumb I use for like doing a blue screen. Like how far away from the blue screen you want to be to like not get a bunch of contamination or spill. It's like one real quick rule of thumb is just say 1/2 the height of the screen. So if you're doing a blue screen shot, if you have a 20 by blue screen, put the actor at least 10 feet away. That's a really good way to
That's a
start
great
off.
rule of thumb.
So if you do that, even on LED, that'll get you kind of close. You say, oh, like let's not go like 10 or 15 feet close to the screen. But I've also worked on very high resolution panels. Like I've done a bunch of projects with Sony Innovation Studios, and we've had panels that were either 1.2 or 1.5 millimeter.
Wow.
So
that's
in that
very
case,
tight pixel pitch.
and I had shot those either with a Venice camera or an LF or even my Monstro, and depending on the sensor pitch of the sensor and that fine pitch on the screen, I was doing narrative focus pulls to the panel and focusing on them and not getting moire. So now I'm telling a story with the content on the screen and not trying to make it a big gauze ball in the background because I'm trying to avoid moire. I'm actually telling a story with the content. That's
Wow.
super fun.
That's a huge.
Yeah, but at this
potential
point,
benefit.
that demand in terms of processing power and the number of render nodes you need to do to drive how big of an array of different panels you have. If you've got 4,000 tiles, you've got to break that up into quadrants that have a box that's going to render the graphics for that area, and then that's all segmented across the whole thing, and the gaming engine is then dividing up the image to all those nodes and processing ray tracing in real time. So when you have that fine of a pixel pitch on the screen, it's a multiplier by how many nodes you're going to have to break up and process it. That's hardware costs, so that that can become pretty expensive on the dollar
Computational
sign.
side, yeah. It's like having a render farm made out of a LAN party, right? Like,
yeah.
Did you used to play video games at all, or do you still
A
play
little bit,
games?
not
I'm not much of a gamer anymore. I stopped playing like Counter-Strike back in 1999
Okay.
at the very beginning. So I've missed
Well,
a
I
lot.
grew up with Atari.
Oh, cool.
ColecoVision.
I always wanted an NES, but my parents wouldn't give me an NES. But it's crazy that we're kind of bridging this realm between the gaming engine world and the motion picture content creation world. So.
I mean, the gaming world is so huge, even comparatively. Like the amount of revenue that they have compared to movies is just like it's an order of magnitude higher. But what's funny is though, so all those assets, all those environments, all those world creation that they've done is suddenly relevant and can port over. I've done an actual proof of concept for a very big game franchise that's going to be turning into a Netflix series. So we actually took all of their environments from the game and used those as the asset for the virtual production. And also creatures that are in the game are actually appearing on the wall, interacting with the talent, the live action talent in the foreground.
That's fun.
They were blown away because some of their creatures are 100 foot tall. And to see them in scale in front of them when they've been always, like building the worlds on a small desktop, they were blown away. And by having, again, a screen and full resolution, like when you have a 100 foot tall character, you go, oh, I get it. Okay,
Hi there.
wow, yeah. And what does the camera want to do now? There, and they have a stage to say, well, no one wants to shoot the ceiling. It's like, is that because you give them a ceiling that you can't shoot? Give me an opportunity where that's beautiful in camera final pixel, I'm going to shoot it,
It's pretty fun to see these worlds bridge because I think probably a new generation of filmmakers are informed about image creation through their experience gaming with the in-game cinematics and then just even the way that the graphics look. And so I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves over time in the way we tell stories. And
some of the cinematics and cutscenes they do on the games are, frankly, some of the best filmmaking I've seen in years. It's just epic, dynamic. I mean, the lighting, the camera moves. It's like, wow, okay, run the shake a stick at. So if I can get into a little bit of that, more power to you. It's super fun.
Do you find any benefit to using anamorphic lenses over spherical lenses with XR and mixed reality?
I would say probably 75 to 80% of my virtual production projects have been all in anamorphic. I mean, the same reason why an anamorphic image is pleasing to the human eye, that sort of elliptical demorphing of the image behind, like it's sort of like our human visual system is designed to always be scanning our environments for threats, right? It's literally like fight or flight, like we're looking for still a wildebeest to come out and like gore us, right? And it's put into our sort of our DNA. By taking and distorting the background image, it sort of turns off that instinct to always kind of be scanning the periphery for threats, because it defocuses in a way that our brain doesn't register. Oh, that looks like some sort of anthropomorphic object moving back there. That could be some guy with a knife that wants to stab me. And so, for that same reason, that slight distortion of the reality in the background really helps blend sort of that blur line when you're trying to tie the physical foreground and marry that to a virtual background. That blend line is always the sort of the critical point where you're always trying to like create that horizon line that doesn't feel like a perfect straight line, and you're always trying to have some sort of foreground and middle ground props that match the environment. And by just taking all of them and naturally sort of blending them with that anamorphic bokeh.
So it kind of puts our human minds into sort of a dream state, right? Where
you relax a little bit
to the story.
And it really separates the foreground too. It helps that foreground pop. And that beautifying factor is, I just think it's become part of the visual lexicon of cinema too. I mean, you just have an association of scope and sort of immediacy, I think, because of that.
There's so many layers. It's kind of, I'm finding myself more and more interested in the physiological nature of our imaging practice, as well as the psychological, the psychology of imaging, what we're trying to convey to people. It's almost sort of like a transcendent mental telepathy that we're trying to do in a way.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of fun with that and kind of nerding out about it. But
big time.
It's a wide-ranging world that we get to experience.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful to be here doing this and
well,
you're
an avid fan of the history of how anamorphic started as well. I mean, you've got a really nice sort of collection of sort of the history of how this process evolved as well. And I think understanding those fundamentals of how it started, and then the films that adopted it and utilized it and suddenly became ingrained in our visual memory of cinema.
Have you seen 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Not lately, but yeah.
I mean, I grew up watching that one. And I didn't realize as a kid that's like the very first Disney live action film. And then it was shot on CinemaScope, and it was shot underwater. So they were doing underwater CinemaScope work in the mid-1950s, and that, an animation studio making a feature film with live action people. That was kind of a big surprise for people.
Yeah. It's great, and I think where we're going now is kind of that same thing, just in a different regard. You had an animation company going into live action, and how does that translate? Now you have all these video game properties going into live action. I don't know if you were watching like Last of Us, that was wildly successful.
I have to catch up. I've got 2 little kids at home, so I don't get much TV time, but I do
less
love
scary, I think, than you would think. But yeah, I mean, they got zombies running around.
Oh no, not for them. I mean, by the time I get them to bed, I don't have time to watch TV. I'm done for the day. That's a wrap on Dan.
Right, and then you start reading my book, and they'll just knock you right out.
The perfect soporific after a hard day's work.
Yeah.
Cool. So, by the way, if you haven't checked out the Cine Lens manual, please check out Christopher Probst, ASC, and Jay Holben's fantastic Cine Lens manual. If you're here at the NAB show, stop by, say hello. If you're looking to purchase a book, let us know. We'll help you find the right way to get the book and take it home.
Yes,
and yes, thank you everyone out there. Are there any questions from the audience that we might want to address, or do they all tune out and go somewhere else because the sound is so bad?
Or you force them onto Facebook.
Okay.
Love it.
What, if you had to name sort of 2 or 3 of your favorite anamorphic films of all time, and I know it's hard to narrow it down, but if you have 2 or 3 favorite anamorphic films, what would you say?
Blade Runner, Prestige.
Oof.
That's a good looking film.
Nice.
Close Encounters is popping into my head.
Yes.
Ironically, some of my favorite aspects of both Blade Runner and Close Encounters also have spherical photography as part of it. What Doug Trumbull did on sort of the VFX. There's sort of spherical glows around some of the ships and stuff like that. That is 65 mil. It's fucking
So
beautiful,
tremendous.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, I believe Mr. Trumbull was also part of creating the Star Tours ride at Disneyland. Do you know anything about that?
A little bit.
I mean, the original Star Tours ride film is probably one of my favorite cinematic experiences. And you don't immediately go to like, yes, this is cinema, but the challenge of creating a ride film I find pretty interesting because it's a simulator ride, so you get in the simulator and then, if you're taking an airline flight, there are no cuts in a flight, so they're trying to, have interstellar travel, and you're looking through the viewport of the spaceship, so you can't cut, because when they were first pitching the ride film, they're like, well, we can cut here, and then we can cut here.
Yeah, you go past some sort of a level, and there's a wipe built in.
Right, you could hide wipes, but there's no cuts in the real world unless you're blanking out, right? So we all do that as human beings all the time.
Well, Trumbull was such an innovator on so many different levels, from visual effects to then obviously special venue ride film type stuff to then like the show scan process. I mean, he was very fascinated with all that. And really, sort of the progenitor of like high frame rate and sort of creating like these hyper realistic images that sort of like blur the line of reality. They had the show scan process where you were in the theater of the show scan theater, and they had a presenter come out and start talking about it and saying like, this is show scan, and then you realize it's not even a human, it's actually on the screen, and you're watching 65 millimeter projected at 60 frames a second, and it's so clear and so vivid, and because that frame rate is just basically the refresh rate of your optic nerve. So you're literally one-to-one taking in a frame as your scan rate of the human brain, that you're getting maximal visual information to your brain. And it feels like you're looking through a cutout in the screen, like it's like a glass window and you're looking at a reality past it. It's insane.
This raises an interesting question. I don't think we're going to come to any kind of conclusion on it today, but I'm wondering why 60 is such a relevant number for the human experience, right? So it's like sexagesimal
is base 60 numbers, but yeah, I mean, if you think about it, all of our mathematics, like 360 is all part of the 60 divisible 60 minutes in a second.
Exactly. My heart rate is often 60 beats.
Yeah. I mean, frequency is a lot of it, and if you actually get into sort of like string theory and understand like the whole universe is based on vibration, and vibration is frequency. So when you start to get into that, it's pretty interesting. You can go down a little bit of a sort of a nerdy rabbit hole and get a little bit metaphysical too.
I love it.
Or paranoid conspiracy too, which is also really fascinating.
Depends on which rabbit hole you go down, right?
Yeah, we should get Forrest in here and talk about
Definitely.
some of this stuff. He's awesome at that. But yeah.
Cool. Well, are there any other shout outs that you'd like to give to anyone, or anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye from the live from Las Vegas 2023?
I would like to just say, keep doing what you're doing. I'm also an avid fan. I watch when you're live streaming from your offices, and just creating new products that are at sort of a industry interrupting price point, but are really well manufactured. It's not just like some vaporware that's going to fall apart. I was an early adopter.
Thank you so much.
Wasn't quite sure. I was like, what? Really? You're going to make some lenses? And I saw it. I was like, geez, okay, yeah, I guess I got to do it. So yeah.
And it's crazy observation. I mean, I used to be in set lighting, and so I worked on several shows with Chris as a set lighting technician, and he was the DP, and so I love the tapestry.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, I forgive you.
Yeah.
I love the tapestry that we weave. I've had the chance to work for many of the greats. People like Eric Messerschmidt. It's been a while, a couple years. Steve Yedlin.
Okay. Fellow nerd.
Worked under a lot of great cinematographers. So,
yeah.
A little of that magic dust might have rubbed off. Hopefully, we'll see.
Right.
But just want to keep doing it, and hope everyone out there in Instagram Live and YouTube Live are having a great Tuesday. Or it's actually Monday. It just feels like a Tuesday because we did the NAB.
Yeah,
show
it's a
on
weird
Sunday,
cadence
so
of like opening on a Sunday.
I'm totally lost here, lost in Las Vegas. But hope everyone's having a fantastic day or night, no matter where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us at the Atlas Lens Co. live stream with Christopher Probst, ASC. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Dan. So much. Cheers.
Be well. Thank you so much for doing that.